Good afternoon and welcome to our Hawkeye Parents and Family webinar. My name is Lisa Kelly, and I work in the Office of Academic Support and Retention, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. If you're unfamiliar with our webinars, they are hosted on the first Friday of each month from noon to 1 p.m. We hope that each one provides you with up-to-date information that may apply to your students' transition to the University of Iowa. We know that parent and family members play a vital role in student success, and we hope that these webinars provide a platform for us to provide you with resources that help you support your student in their success. If you can't attend every live webinar, we do record and post them later on both our website and on YouTube. For more information, future topics, or to sign up for webinars, please visit parents.uiowa.edu and click on the Resources tab. Each webinar has a short presentation and then a question and answer portion, where you can get your questions answered by our campus experts. Today's webinar is Exploring Summer Jobs and Internships. We're very lucky to have two wonderful campus partners with us today. Josh Fromm from the University of Iowa STEP program, which stands for Student to Employed Professional, as well as being a Student Employment Coordinator. Jenny Joyce is the Associate Director of Experiential Education at the Pomerantz Career Center. They will share information that will help you, and therefore your student, understand the value of summer jobs and internships while also gaining knowledge on resources available regarding student employment and internships. We'll start with Josh.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting us here today. So I am with the Office of Student Employment here at the University of Iowa. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the benefits of student employment, a little bit about how it works on campus here at the University of Iowa, and if you have any questions throughout or at the end, we'll be happy to answer it for you. So on this first slide that is up, I give you kind of an A, B, or C question there to look at. So, I try, when I talk to students about student employment, I try to view it from kind of a future hiring manager or recruiter's perspective. So who are they, what types of students are they looking at for, internships or full-time job opportunities? So, I'll ask students and I'll ask you guys, if you're thinking, who would you hire as an employee? You got A, B, or C. You got a UI graduate, you got a graduate with some internship and job experience, or you got a graduate with not only internship and job experience, but maybe they're a student organizational leader or they volunteer consistently on campus. I've posed this question to probably, I would say, over 1,000 students at this point, and nobody ever, not even one outlier, has said anything but C ever. So I asked them the question, and just to get you thinking a little bit, I asked them, well, why C? And the answer I always get is, well, they have more experience. And that's absolutely true. But it's not just that they have more experience, but through that experience, they're able to put themselves in a diverse set of situations where they can learn a lot of the skills we'll talk about today that employers really value in our new college graduates eventually. So that's the question, just to get you thinking on some of the values and some of the things that our student jobs can provide. So and this is a long slide, but just some facts, and Jenny will chime in here with some of her facts as well. But with more and more students having college degrees than ever before, I think it's something where our students now and employers are looking for students who are involved in more things than just going to class every day. So that extracurricular involvement, whether it's student employment, internships, student organizational involvement, all of that helps to diversify their sets of experiences, and just it adds to their overall educational value of being here at the university. So one of the things that is stressed from day one when your students are here is get involved on campus. We have our pick one event the first week where they pick something to get involved in, and it's a big part of that is to get them thinking about how they can learn outside of the classroom as well as inside of the classroom. You got some stats there as far as what employers are saying that they're looking for in new college grads, and a lot of times they're saying, hey, we want them to come out with a little bit more in the way of communication skills or critical thinking skills. So as you can see on the bottom half, if you do one of those things, extracurricular involvement, student jobs, you almost double the amount of job opportunities available. And then it goes on to list some of the skills that you can learn through some of those experiences that employers really, really value. So, even if the student isn't necessarily working a job that's specific to their career, it is still a very valuable experience. And that's something that we try to stress to students is even if you're working in housing and dining or rec services or wherever it is, and that's not where your future career lies, there's still a lot of value that can come from that. And, I get asked all the time from students and parents, what types of jobs are available? And my answer to that question is pretty much everything you can think of. So, we have over 200 departments on campus, and almost all of them hire some type of student employee. So their chances to be involved in a lot of different aspects of the university are there. Jenny, do you have something to add as far as stats and stuff?
I think as far as internships go, it's really saying, just like those campus jobs, what are ways that students can get out into the workforce? How can they develop those soft skills? And there are some other tangible benefits from doing internships as well, both paid and unpaid. So if we look at unpaid internships, they're positively correlated with students confirming or rejecting their career interests, so it's a great way to explore. It helps them set and attain career goals to see what's really manageable for themselves. And then with those unpaid internships, they're really associated with being able to do some good networking, having quality supervision and mentorship, and understanding their academic coursework. And that, that is from NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So it is an industry research, but there's also academic research that says doing internships influences the student's GPA in a positive manner as well when they look from that first year to the fourth year. So there's those benefits of some of those soft decision-making skills and really getting out to the workforce. But then even for Hawkeye graduates from our placement survey post-graduation, those who have done internships, a practicum, co-op, or research, they earn more in their first salary after graduation than those students who haven't participated in one of those activities. So as your student starts to get involved in things on campus and off campus, they really want to start saying to themselves, all right, if I want to get a job before I graduate, so they want that full-time position offer before they graduate, they want to make sure that they've done at least one paid internship or at least 3 unpaid internships and or other relevant experiences that have been unpaid. So that can be study abroad, can be research, can be other activities on campus as well.
And I'm glad you mentioned kind of the GPA thing. So that's a common concern that I get from students and parents alike with regards to working is, well, if my student is working, 10, 15 hours a week, that's 10 to 15 hours that they aren't studying. While that's technically true, I think that one of the things that work can provide is some structure for your students. So, if you think about it, their entire life since they were probably 3 years old, they're told when to go to a certain place, and they have, if they're going to elementary school, high school, maybe it's 8 to 3, and then afterwards they have band practice or sports practice. They have a lot of that structure, and then when they come to the University of Iowa, it's a little bit less structured, so they have a little bit more free time on their hands to make their own decisions on what they want to do. And I think one of the consistent things that we hear from students is it really helps their time management and organizational skills, because when it's time to study, they actually are forced to study, because if they're working 10 hours a week, that is taking some of that time away. So if it's time to study, they make sure to go and do that. And we've actually done some statistics over the last 10 or 11 years here at the university. Our student retention rate increases about a little over 4% for our student workers compared to non-workers. The GPA is about a little over 1/10 of a point higher. And our graduation rates at 4 and 6 years are higher for the folks who have worked on campus than those who have not. So really cool information that kind of goes against the grain from a lot of initial thought processes about student employment. And a lot of that difference comes from just the skills that they're learning that they can take into the classroom, whether it's time management, organizational skills, as I said, or simply having a supervisor to mentor them or to support them, or feeling more of a part of the university. All those things we've found to be really critical examples of why students perform better. And we have a development series through our office in student employment that we run for student supervisors to try to help them support your students a little bit better. And if you have an incoming freshman per se that wants to come in, they're unsure if they want to work, there's jobs on our HireHawk system between 1 and 20 hours. 20 hours is the max by state law that they can work on a campus job on average. But we have plenty of jobs that are 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours a week. So if they want to start slowly, they have the opportunity to do that. So switching gears a little bit, just one of the things that we try to teach our student employees is just the fact that they want to learn how to work and behave in a workplace setting as compared to a college classroom. There is a little bit of a difference there. And as someone who teaches a couple classes, I think maybe I could do a better job of this even. But if you're late for a class in a 300-person lecture, what's going to happen to you? Well, not a whole lot. If you're late for a class, like my classes are between 25 and 35 students, they might get docked an attendance point or two. But it's not the end of the world. If you're late and you consistently are late in the workplace, there's a lot different consequences for that. So some of the difference in how things, and you can see kind of side by side, look there on the slides, some of the differences that they're going to see are definitely there. So from an employer standpoint, I want our students to understand what is expected of them in the workplace and how maybe that college mindset can be a little bit different. So you see some of those there. I mean, they're used to frequent breaks and time off. You get your spring break, your summer vacation, that type of thing. I wish. We work at a university, and I get people that ask me all the time, so you don't have to work in the summer? I'm like, yeah, I do. So, they just not having that consistent time off is something that is a big change for our students. And, as a student, their focus is mainly on their own personal growth and development. Whereas, if they join an organization, no matter what their field is, they're going to have a lot of team effort involved. It's more of an organizational challenge than an individual challenge. So just a lot of little differences we try to teach them about and just prepare them for. All right, so one of the things that we do, if your student is employed at the university, we offer workforce development sessions through my UI STEP program, which stands for Student to Employed Professional. And it's all about basically getting your students to learn all the little things that make a great employee. So we discuss things that basically make up their brand as an employee. So, if you're looking at that list of 7 things there's a lot of things where they seem like very small things, small etiquette things, but in the grand scheme of things, if your student is looking to be in the top 10% of employees there, if they're looking to get promoted, they need to do all of these things very effectively. So we really stress the ability to do those little things and how they make up a great employee. And we talk a lot about the differences between a meeting expectations compared to an exceeding expectations employee. So you'll see I highlight being proactive. I'm huge with regards to telling them to do that. A lot of ways that they could stand out as a student worker here. Just what do they do when their work is done? I think a lot of us will jump on our phone, jump on the internet, but you want to be in the top 10%. We tell them, hey, go to your supervisor, go to your team members. Is there anything else we can help with? We want to kind of instill that proactive mindset of trying to learn on the job. So just a few things, kind of 7 things there that I think would help your student improve your worth every day. And as they work on it as 18, 19, 20-year-old, if they get better at this now, they're going to put themselves in position and kind of hit the ground running when they get their first full-time career. So, talking about problem solving, how to help make your supervisor's life easier. I think number 4 is a big thing for me, is just getting them to understand that it's not just them. There's a lot of different aspects in many departments. Some of our departments, you'll have 4 or 5 different sections of that organization. So, we talk a lot about the importance of not only understanding their role, but how it kind of fits into the big picture. I think one of the big benefits too, looking at number 7, that students have a resource on is just the student supervisors on campus. So, we started about 3 years ago, we do a Student Supervisor of the Year award. So when I created this, I thought, okay, we'll get about 5 students. It's extra work for students, right? So I was like, okay, well, I might get 5 that I have to review. I got 91 students that nominated their supervisor. Some of them wrote up to 5 pages of information. So, the value that those supervisors can have on their professional development is huge, and one of the big reasons that we want them to work on campus. And our campus employers understand that your students are students first. So if they're professional in their communication, they let them know when they have tests and group work and stuff like that. They're oftentimes very, very flexible in their hours and help a great deal with that. All right, so just a few things. Again, if your student is like me, I was a broke college student at the University of Iowa. I'm working for money. That's the first thing I think about. We try to get them to think about employment in a little bit different way. We discuss kind of that professional etiquette, getting something to build your resume, developing some of those soft skills or transferable skills. One of the things I highly encourage our students to do, and I talk to them, is even if you don't like your job on campus, at the very least you want to showcase your work ethic to get a reference out of it. Preferably they have a minimum of 3 to 5 to 7 references that they can go to by the time they graduate from Iowa. And working jobs on campus can help provide them that. And some things that they might not think about too is just, what do you like and dislike in a work environment? Do they like to work by themselves? Do you like to work with a team? Do you like to sit behind a desk? Do you like to move around? What type of supervisor do you like working for? All of those things they can start to learn and figure out if the major they chose and the career path they chose is right for them. All right, so I'm going to transfer this over to Jenny to discuss internships now.
All right, thank you, Josh. So with some of those benefits of the jobs on campus that Josh mentioned, internships offer some of those same benefits too, and just one level up with that idea of professionalism. And so students are really learning about that career exploration piece, gaining industry knowledge firsthand. When they are younger, some of those internships, it might be saying, how do I figure out between 2 separate fields? As they gain more experience, it might be figuring out, you know what, I do know I want to be in this field, but maybe I want to be in this role or this function. Or maybe I want to be at a company that is larger versus a company that is smaller. So they're able to explore those things. There's also the professionalism piece of learning not just what is it going to be like to work with students and adults, but what is it like to work with adults all the time? Who are those colleagues? What is it like to work with those up the food chain as well? There's then some skill and leadership development. And yes, we do get a lot of reports from students. If you look at that growth section, when they report to us on their evaluations, the thing that they report the most growth in is their written and verbal communication, their listening skills, and their ability to take feedback professionally. But with those soft skills, they also then get some more hard skills and leadership development in their internships as well. That might be leading different meetings. It might be learning the specific protocols for their industry, learning how to code or learning how to use specific software and how to interact for their specific industry with their clients or with their patients and their participants. There's also then those benefits of the networking and references, and we do encourage with internships for students to not just know who their supervisor is and their teammates, but to push themselves a little bit further and go and talk to people on other teams in the workplace. That way they can start to understand various different people's career paths. With that then, there are a few differences between internships and jobs that we do like to point out. It will be that, if you're worried about your student and whether or not their internship is really a good internship, then these are some of the things that you could ask about. And the big ones that I'd have you ask them about would then be saying, well, what are your job duties? Okay? You want to make sure that they're working on projects. They're not just getting coffee or they're not just filing. The other big one that what I would have you ask them about is, are you being provided or are you setting some learning objectives? So are they thinking critically about what they want to get out of the internship and what their goals are for it? You can also ask about supervision. That way you know that they're being supervised by a professional. You can see if they're having a meeting at least once a week with their supervisor, and then they have that ability to get feedback. And so that can be on performance evaluations as well as having those one-on-one conversations with their supervisor, or even in the moment, that on-the-fly feedback so that they can grow. So those are going to be some of the big things to look for in a quality internship. The other pieces then that will make it an internship as opposed to a job is that it is going to be related to their studies or their career goals. It is typically going to be following an academic calendar. Now, sometimes in some fields you will see practicums. Those sometimes might be a little bit shorter. You'll also sometimes see co-ops, which are longer than a semester, typically 2 semesters. Now, for an internship, we typically see 20 to 40 hours per week during the summer, and then there's a minimum of 10 hours per week during the school year. With that, students can do more than one internship. So they could say, during the school year, I did an internship while I was still in my classes, discovering this one company, and then that following summer they decided, nope, I'm doing full-time with that other company. And so it's perfectly fine to be flexible both with their schedule and where they're seeking out those internships in order to fit in more than one. So when we think about preparing now, if your student's a first year, they've probably just gotten their feet under them at college. And so they might not be thinking about internships yet. And so even though they're not quite ready, it can be okay to start thinking about them and how to get ready for the previous year when they do finally want to apply. So one of those first things is to gain soft skills via jobs and volunteering. Everybody's going to start somewhere, and employers do want to see those skills. So it's all those benefits that Josh mentioned. They want to start saying, all right, how can I get involved? The next thing that I would recommend they do is to conduct informational interviews, which are interviews about someone's job as opposed to being interviewed for a job. So those can be formal, where your student has contacted a stranger and saying, you know what, I would like to come to your workplace and I would like to ask you questions in order to gain your advice. Or it can be something that's very informal. You might have a family friend who is in a profession that your student's interested in, and your student might reach out to them and say, hey, can I treat you for coffee and ask you about your job? So it can be both of those pieces. Even though it's the summer, they can still meet with a career advisor at the Pomerantz Career Center. So that could happen via phone, it could be virtual appointments, as well as if you're in the area, it can be in person. And the reason to meet with a career advisor is that they can get more tailored resources. So we can really look and start to say, well, what's your specific situation? What are the logistical needs and what are your interests, in order to send them towards some leads that might be more helpful than others. In addition, since students are still getting to know the world of work and the professional work, the professional world, it can be really good just to start to gain definition. And so that might be really researching a little bit about what they want to explore in an internship or skills that they want to explore. Once they gain a little bit of definition, it makes it much more likely that they'll be able to find a good experience for themselves because they have defined those goals. A really easy thing that they can also do is just start to set up a passive search for themselves. So keeping internships in the back of their mind, not necessarily actively saying I'm going to be looking for them right now and applying every single day, but they can set up an advanced search on HireAHawk, they can then save it, and those then will be emailed to them. So they could then start to just keep a list on a spreadsheet or on a Word document where they might say, ooh, I found that title interesting, or that organization, I want to check that out later. Or they might note deadlines. And so they might say, well, I know I'm not ready right now, but next fall, I want to make sure that I keep looking for this internship and that I do note that deadline and I'm ready for it. Then last but not least, students over the summer, if they're doing some great things, they should start to say, no, I need to update my resume, get those different activities, those different jobs that I've had on my resume and make sure it looks professional. They can then start to get ready for the fall job and internship fair, practicing handshakes, doing introductions. Some industries, they will be hiring in the fall, and your student is going to need to be ready to say, yep, I'm hitting the ground running, I'm going to that fair, and I'm making it happen. For other students, Even if their industry isn't hiring, I'd still recommend going because it's a great way for them to work out their jitters, they can practice networking, and then they can be on the lookout for things for the future. And by being ready for the fair, they're also then going to be ready for other networking events or other information sessions that are hosted by their departments. So there are some resources that students can use to get started through the Pomerantz Career Center. Our main website is careers.uiowa.edu, and students can just click on that student section. A few parts that I would recommend is just for them to go on there and explore. If they're still very undecided, then have them look at the career communities pages. On those pages, it provides exploration links. There's examples of job titles, there's professional organizations, as well as links to previews of what's in HireHawk and a link to alumni. So students can see people's career paths, see the job titles that are potential for the future. On our site as well, we will advertise the career fairs. And then that other big piece that they'll want to start to be familiar with is hirehawk.com. And that's the database for student jobs, internships, as well as full-time positions. But these are all from employers who want to hire Hawkeyes. So they know by using this system that these people are purposely recruiting at the University of Iowa.
Yeah, and this final page is simply a few other career-related websites that I really like to utilize. The first one is probably my favorite, workdaily.com. It's basically a list of professionals in all sorts of industries that will write articles and do videos and almost everything you can think about as far as setting up a resume, job searching, networking, personal branding, almost anything career-related that you could think of, just to get by following this, your students can get a lot of great information to help prepare them for future internships and jobs. So a few other websites on there. Jenny mentioned NACE, National Association of College and Employers. That's an outstanding resource just to keep up to date on some of the trends in the job market and information maybe in their specific industry. So a few things there that could be resources for your students.
The other two websites that I would mention as well, and that Josh just mentioned up here, is saying, oh, follow some of these on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great professional networking sites for students to start to become familiar with and start to understand how they can use the internet and the powers of the web in order to both search and to network as well. And then the other one I recommend is muse.com. Similar to Work It Daily, it has lots of great articles, great advice, and students can have the blog emailed directly to them.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny and Josh, for all this great information on summer jobs and internships. We'll now move into the question and answer portion of our webinar. Please keep in mind that our presenters are unable to answer questions about specifics on your student's experience, but they can provide information that may be helpful in guiding your student. If you have a question, type it into the question box on the side. We'll then read the question so all participants can hear, and then the presenters will answer the question. If we're unable to get to your question during the webinar, we'll follow up with you via email. So we'll just give you just a second to type in some questions.
And it looks like we've got one already. It says, my daughter is a journalism and mass communication major and many internships, but they're requesting writing samples. So what exactly are they looking for? For this, if your daughter has any experience with Daily Iowan or writing articles for classes, they're looking for something that is relevant, but then well written. So if your student doesn't have anything from an assignment or an article that is more in the format of the organization that they're looking for, she can use a class paper or he can use a class paper. What they're then going to do is typically I'd say still submit it, but with a little bit of an explanation of what they feel like it demonstrates. So they can write a few sentences at the top saying this is the context of what this was written for, whether it was a class, the Daily Iowan, etc. Then also saying I feel like it demonstrates and shows my skills of X, Y, and Z.
Okay, another question. Can students get help with their resumes before submitting to HireHawk?
Absolutely. So Jenny, I could probably take this one, but we have peer advisors at the Career Center. It's 9 to 4, right?
It is now. It's been changed because we hired a few more. It's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay.
That's Monday through Friday, and that's during the school year. So it's when school's in session because we're hiring the students themselves. So they can get the resume reviewed there, and then the first time that they submit an application in HireHawk, they do have to have their resume approved, and that approval can take place in HireHawk. If they get rejected that first time in the HireHawk system, typically I would really encourage a student then to just come in and meet with a peer or come in and meet with one of the advisors in an appointment, because it's much easier to give those tips in person or over the phone than it is via the internet. That way a student doesn't get too frustrated and saying, well, I made these changes and these changes, but why isn't it approved?
One great thing the Career Center website has is they have some sample resume templates that aren't the typical template that are really difficult to edit, but they're editable right in there. So if your student is really concerned about writing a first resume, they don't have a ton of experience, there's a lot of great samples out there on the Pomerantz Career Center website that can help them get started.
Mm-hmm. And with that, some of the great things about those samples too is these are the formats that employers have told us that they typically want to see in those young resumes. So it's not going to have, unless your student is a graphic design major, their resume really won't have a lot of flash to it. It's not going to have lots of color. It's not going to be more than one page. And so by using the templates on the website, they're more easily going to meet the requirements of what we would recommend, as well as then what would get them approved in HireHawk.
Cool. Do you offer mock phone or in-person interviews for students?
We offer both, but not phone. We offer a program called Interview Stream, and what students can do is they can then record themselves doing interviews, and they can see themselves right away on the screen of how they did. They can then show that video to mentors, to supervisors, as well as they can make an appointment at the Career Center, and we'll go over the content of each of their individual answers with them. When students are feeling a little bit more comfortable, then we do have in-person interviews with employers. So they're with recruiters, they're with people who do interviewing for a living, and so they're really nice, they're friendly, they make sure students don't feel too nervous about it, and they're able to get some real feedback. With those in-person interviews, every student gets the same 10 questions that are questions that can span across industry, and so students don't need to worry about trying to pick a very specific employer to do their mock interview with.
Do all student employees join the STEP program you're talking about? And if not, how can they join?
No, so it's not automatic. A lot of our employers will do it. So basically, once they're employed, we will send an email out each semester. We have about 6 workforce development. They're about hour and 45-minute sessions. We have 6 of them each semester. So it could either be the student or the employer that sets it up for them. So a lot of times it is the employer, and the students will get paid for that time in 99% of the cases. We also have a 2-semester hour class that meets twice a week for 50 minutes, and it's A through F grade, so it's all about professional development, taking their student jobs, that type of thing, to help prepare them for their future careers and hopefully give them a lot of that general education they need to know what action steps they need to take. So every semester there's a class open on UI Step for about 30. The max student count is about 30, so we'll usually have about 25 to 30 there. So all that stuff can be found on our student employment website, or they can contact me directly. I'd be happy to answer any questions for them about the program.
And students can also take other classes through the Career Center as well. An intensive one that we recommend is Career Leadership Academy. It was developed talking to employers, helping them work on helping projects together, helping students really work together and have the presentation skills and the skills that employers are going to want to see. There's also a lot of 1-credit courses, so if students wanted to work on a specific soft skill, or if they wanted to talk just about job searching or just about getting into graduate school, there are courses for that as well.
My student got work study on their financial aid package. How is that similar or different from an on-campus job? Are there some jobs that are just for work study, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we get plenty of work study questions. It's a little bit of a confusing topic. So work study is through the FAFSA application. So it's a financial need program. So each semester we'll get a certain amount of funds allotted, and we award students who selected on the FAFSA that they would like work study. So I would say just a rough estimate, about 10% of our employers are work study only, which means if your student doesn't have work study, they won't be able to apply. But I get that all the time, the question all the time, if my student doesn't have work study, can they still work on campus? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Usually each semester we have 6,000 to 7,000 students that are hired under part-time and about 1,000 to 1,500 that are work study. So there's a big percentage of our jobs that are going to hire either or. So it's not a requirement, but obviously from an employer standpoint, if your student has work study, it's a nice advantage. So if I'm an employer and I'm paying $10 an hour, let's say, and a student has work study, I'm being reimbursed through the work study program for half of that. So the student still gets their $10 an hour, but it's like I'm only paying $5. So it is a little bit of a competitive edge. But the only ones that will require it are usually just ones who they need student workers, who maybe don't have the budget to hire a bunch of student workers. So that is a big factor there. But if your student has work study, it is a nice advantage, but at the same time, it doesn't mean they can't work on campus.
My student's a history major. Are there internships for humanities students?
Yes, there are. And that's where, if we look at humanities, if we look at history specifically, we're going to ask students questions about their interest, about their skills, how they want to start to apply it. If we look at history specifically on campus, we have lots of museums. We also have a special archive at the library on campus that students will do internships at. There's also in town the Historical Society, and then there are a few museums, as well as the National Herbert Hoover Library and sort of an outdoor museum that is nearby. And those are just the ones that are nearby. If we think about humanities, we're typically asking them what skills they want to develop, what type of work environments they want to be in, as well as where they geographically want to be located. And then we'll help them find those resources that they need to find those specific internships, whether sometimes it is specific search sites for an industry, other times it's helping them find specific organizations that they want to look on their websites for programs or to reach out to make an internship. And then other times it's going to be really hitting on that networking very hard.
If a student gets a semester-long internship, can they still graduate on time, or is that going to impact that?
That will depend on their credits, and that would be a question that the student would want to discuss with the academic advisor, because it'll also depend on the major. So if we think about accounting, it is actually often, in finance, it's often usual for students to take one full semester in a spring semester off, where that's all they're doing is their internship, because during tax season, there's lots and lots of work. But it's really similar then to study abroad, where they're saying, what are the time period in which I'm fitting this in, and then working with their academic advisor to really make sure they're balancing their course load, the number of majors or certificates they're doing, and the outside of class aspects that are taken care of.
Are undergraduate research positions advertised on Hire a Hawk, or things with the hospital and things?
Yeah, great question. I get that all the time. Absolutely. There's tons of research here at the university. There's a lot of lab jobs. The hospital will advertise on HireHawk, but I do tell students who want to work at the hospital to work through and try to get some volunteer experience there as well, because a lot of times they won't advertise and they'll hire through their volunteer pool first, and a lot of underclassmen will do that. And most health majors are going to require some type of volunteer work anyways. So that's something that I always encourage students to do, to just increase their chances of getting in. So when they do post, like if they posted an office assistant job and it says UIHC in front of it, compared to an office assistant job that isn't at the hospital, we'll see about 4 times as many applications often for hospital jobs. So, the students really want those jobs, and while they do advertise, we highly recommend that they're aggressive in trying to, get involved at the hospital any way they can, whether it's volunteer work or, learn of jobs through word of mouth, or set up informational interviews, job shadowing, stuff like that can really help them learn and get their foot in the door, so to speak.
There are also other local hospitals, Mercy, and free clinics that students can get involved with that they can try to do first in order to then try to make themselves more competitive for UIHC. And then as far as the research goes, like Josh said, yes, there'll be some on HireHawk, but also have your student talk and look at their website in their department, as well as then looking at iCrew, the Iowa Center for Research by Undergraduates, because they can help students develop projects and network with professors if they're not in an apartment where it's typical to say, here's our lab where we regularly have openings.
And I tell students all the time, go to the professor's office hours. Most professors are going to do some type of research. If they want to get involved, go to office hours. Don't just ask about the class. A lot of them have worked in the industry, that type of thing. They can get a lot of career advice. I've had a number of my students who, just by being more active with their professors, have gotten on with a research opportunity because of that. So take advantage of those resources. A lot of the professors aren't as scary as your students might think they are. So have them take advantage of those office hours as a resource.
I know my cousin worked in a lab for 3 years because he went and talked to his psych professor, so it definitely works. Yeah.
All about networking.
Well, it looks like we've dried up on questions. If anyone else has a question, now's the time to write it in. We'll just pause for just a second and see. All right, so I think that's it for questions. So thanks again to Josh and Jenny for joining us today. As a reminder, all webinars will be posted online at uc.uiowa.edu/family-resources, which you can see the website there too. Additional questions can be sent to uc-retention@uiowa.edu, and those will get a response from a University of Iowa staff member. We haven't been doing this all the time, but for this webinar, since there's so many really great web-related resources in the slides, anyone who's registered for the webinar will get an email with the slides, so you can have those web addresses so you can see them yourself or share them with your students. And finally, please join us for our last webinar of this school year, Managing the Summer Transition, on May 4th from noon to 1 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us today. On Iowa, go Hawks!